Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so this won't be a super long show, but we did want to cover a couple things. Um, Largely, I wanted to show you this. So, Newsweek has been doing an article recently that came out talking about how they were supportive of people who supported secession. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Whoops. USA Today did that. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. So, anyways, USA Today did an article where they had a liberal agree. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene wants a national divorce. This liberal says, let's do it. We've covered that. Liberals, not widely reported, but there have been some liberals who are saying, we support this. And, basically it's kind of tongue in cheek. She's crazy. She's whack job crazy. She's crazy. And actual conservatives don't like this. But then he says this: forget with the attorneys. Let's just get this national divorce over with. Look, there's no telling when the cheese slid off Greene's cracker. But as she said in her national divorce doctrine, tragically, I think we, the left and the right, have reached irreconcilable differences. If dealing with someone like Greene is what's required to reconcile our difference, I have to agree. This phrase right here, if dealing with someone like Greene is what's required to reconcile our differences, I have to agree. I have said this a million times. When Roe v. Wade was overturned and liberals said we have to reach out to moderate conservatives to get them to join with us, I said, okay, I know a lot of people who are religious and love guns and believe a woman's place is in the home, and they don't believe in climate change, and they're not really for LGBTQ transgender storytime hour, but they do believe a woman has the right to choose. So, ready to work with them, and every liberal that I saw said, like, ooh, no, gross. So, this is a sentiment I have seen many times. If I have to work with someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene and I'm a liberal, hell no, I don't want to come back together and make the nation heal. This is something I asked the three different professors. I go, if America does not need national divorce, but it needs marriage counseling, as a famous conservative said, what does that look like? And then I responded with this. It's like, do liberals even want to work with conservatives to have marriage counseling? From my estimation, no. When I saw them with Roe v. Wade, they did not want to work with any conservatives who did not fit liberal ideology, even though Roe v. Wade is an existential crisis more important than anything else. So we have a tongue-in-cheek response from a liberal supporting national divorce. This is 2023. Now I want to show you this. This is from 2020, and it's in Newsweek 3 years ago. Maybe a conscious uncoupling of red and blue states is the way to go by Mark Joseph. And he talks about, libtards and the conservatives hate liberals. And Gwyneth Paltrow talked about how she wants to have a conscious uncoupling, not a divorce, a conscious uncoupling with her husband. And he was saying, maybe us liberals should back that up. If conservatives don't want to be around us, maybe us liberals should back this up. And he drew a little map, which I don't agree with because we don't want to join Canada. And the other West Coast, they could join us, but we're doing our own thing. Then he talks about how they would form it, etc. The best news of all will be immediately bringing peace to our lives is the end of the culture wars as we've known it since the 1960s. For the USA will be free to pursue conservative social and economic policies that the right has dreamed about since the days of Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan, and the USC will be able to implement the dreams of Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders with no opposition from the right. A red USC and a red USA will a blue USC and a red USA will also provide us living laboratories of sorts to compare which ideology works best in practice. So he's saying, we could have the policies that we want if we were independent, and we can't have those because we're having these culture wars to go on to the 1960s. Now, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but here's Newsweek in 2020 talking about this. And then here's USA Today kind of saying the same thing 3 years later. So this was on February 12th, 2020. This is on February. That's, oh my God, dude, look at this. This is published on February 22nd, 2023. This is published on February 12th, 2020. These are almost exactly 3 years apart. Almost exactly 3 years apart. Maybe conscious uncoupling of the country is the way to go, 2020. Almost exactly 3 years apart. Here's another one, USA Today, liberals saying, oh, let's get out. But let me show you this thing. So here's Newsweek 3 years ago saying conscious uncoupling is the way to go. Then here's Newsweek this week. National divorce? No, thanks. Let's just follow the Constitution. Here's Chuck DeVore. And he was from California, moved to Texas to do policy. And he talks about you don't need secession. You just need basically federalism. Right, here we go. These regulators and officials invested with the power to create law, enforce law, and adjudicate law, then intrude into powers intended to be reserved to the states or to the people. This, in turn, builds resentment, fueling so-called talk of a national divorce. So he's saying the federal government doesn't need to push into the states with so many rules. You should let federalism happen. The states can be independent. And then we don't need to have talk of national divorce. Says talk of national divorce would be fraught with danger. And then he goes back to the tired trope, many other, well, if the colonies, if we split up, a foreign power would come and get us. And then he talks about how, in the Federalists, they said if they split up, Britain or Spain or France may come against them. I don't really buy it because Britain came for the 12 colonies and they beat them off with the French. So why should we assume that the 12 colonies can't fight off another European power when they just did it? Additionally, European powers were not stupid. If they saw this group fight off a European power in a long, exhaustive war that ruined England, typically that would encourage Spain and France to not invade, since they saw how another major European power had its economy decimated fighting that war. So there's some reasons not to believe this. Secondly, we can also point out, if we're going to go by famous people, oh, here's John Jay, I could point out that Thomas Jefferson himself said the West Coast should not be part of America, period, and said it was going to be a Pacific Empire. So if we're going to go by founding fathers, I'll go with Thomas Jefferson, who far trumps all of these guys, except for maybe like Benjamin Franklin. And he said straight up, the West Coast should not be tied to America. It'd just be too big. So anyways, it's just interesting that you can see how here's Newsweek in 2023 when Marjorie Taylor Greene's talking about national divorce. Hell no, we don't want that. Now let's go back to 2020 when people were worried about Trump and liberals wanted a divorce. Hell yes, we do want that. So Trump's in charge. Maybe liberals need to go their own way. Literally March 2020. Biden's in charge. No, we don't need to go our own way. Let's just have federalism. Secession is bad. Biden's president. I guess it's on 3/23, but it said February. Okay, well, it's still basically a year to the day. So it's interesting that Biden's in charge. No, we don't need secession. Trump's in charge. Yes, we do need secession. And this was 3 years ago, and here we are 3 years later. Another liberal, like this guy, is kind of tongue-in-cheek saying, maybe we should look into secession. 3 years later, same article, and you can see how the original publication is trying to contradict itself. Hey, how's everyone doing? Daniel, Rich, how you guys doing? So that was basically it. Let's see here. Let me try to post up some of these comments. So Rich says Marjorie Taylor Queen, and Daniel says, I don't care who is president, I still want secession. And that was the story of today, guys, was that 3 years ago, they were saying maybe liberals should get out. And then now, almost 3 years to the day, maybe within a few weeks, they're saying maybe liberals should get out. But Newsweek is changing its tone because now it's a Democrat in charge. But before, when it was a conservative Trump in charge, they were cool with this. So I just want to see how the media narrative changes over time. The other thing is I want to thank Daniel for this video. Just a second. We did 1 second. I want to thank Daniel for showing us about a video by Mr. Beat. We did a show on that, and we wouldn't have known about that if it wasn't for Daniel. So thank you very much. Here's the show we did on Mr. Beat. Let's see. Let me show you Mr. Beat. Yeah. So this was the show we did on Mr. Beat. He did a show on what if the United States did get a national divorce. Very informative, a lot of good information. Some of the facts were wrong, and we corrected that. But it was great to be able to be part of the conversation. And basically, we just did this. We go, so Mr. Beat saying there's no real division in America. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a politician who's doing this for her own personal benefit. And then I just did what I typically do. I go, okay, so Anna Kasparian, The View, all these people. Oh, there's no real division. The breaking points. Oh, she's just making this up on her own for her own personal benefit. And then I cover all these national news stories that have come out about national division over the last couple of years, which none of the talking heads are able to mention. So all the talking heads are saying, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying there's national division. There's no national division. We basically agree and are totally united. It's just her, and she's doing this for her own personal political gain. And then I kind of showed how that's garbage. Like, they just don't want to admit basic facts that are going on right now. And I walked through the whole thing. But it was really important because, a lot of these facts are not getting out. A lot of misinformation still happening. So that was that video. Let me show you some of the original source material. So this was the cover. Mr. Beat gets facts wrong. We were originally going to do it as this show. It's easy to split up states, but we merged them together, and it was a follow-up to this show. And what we talked about was that you can split up states easily. If you look at power districts, water supply, freeway networks, population maps, and voting populations, it's easy to recognize where the majority liberal population is from the rest of the conservative population, and to separate those into separate water and electrical districts. Once you have a reliable water supply and power supply, and you have adequate transportation, you're basically in the game to have a state that's operating. It has power, it has water, it has transportation. That means it can run its basic economy and provide for its people and handle transportation of goods. And then we split up these areas into the districts so that you had basically a large 3/4 of the state that was rural and red, and about 1/3 or 1/4 of the state that was blue. But it allowed them to be separated in a way that could work almost immediately, because power districts are separate from one another. Water districts are separate from one another. So those boundary lines already exist within the state. They're internal boundary lines. We could use those as the access point for splitting these up. So there's Georgia, Texas, Illinois, Oregon, and California. And I showed you how basically you could split these up into two separate states, red and blue. Oregon, Illinois, Texas, Georgia, and California, and how it's relatively easy. But most of what I covered was this. I'm sick and tired of people saying there's no division in America and acting like everything was fine when we've had all these national news stories. Brightline research. Hey, people in America want to secede. 47% of liberals, 66% of conservatives where Marjorie Taylor Greene's from, not mentioned. 80% of Biden and Trump voters view the other side as a clear and present danger to America. All the elected officials of the other side and all the voters of the other side is a clear and present danger to America. 41% of Biden voters want national divorce. 52% of Trump supporters back national divorce. This survey is 2 years old, about a year and a half, not mentioned at all. Here's some of the bylines where they show that. Really hard statistics, difficult to take in. Then we went over the big sort, which was covered in 2008 and covered again in 2022, which showed that people were fleeing based upon political preferences. I talked to Professor Ryan Griffiths about that. And this was also covered by the New York Times in 2016, because when people were sorting themselves out, you started having an increase in landslide voting counties where a Republican or Democratic president wins by 20 percentage points or more. So if you look at these maps and you look at the gray area, that's where you could be a Republican or a Democrat and have a fair chance of winning. Red, you basically got to be a Republican. Republicans always win by 20 points. Blue, Democrats always win by 20 points. And what you can basically see is how the gray disappears. It just disappears from 1992 to 2012 and then all the way to 2016. And I really like this because people go, well, social media is dividing us. Really? Social media didn't become the force that it is until maybe 2015, 2016. This is showing how 1992, 2000, 2012, 2 decades before social media became a big thing, we were already having this division. How did social media make it happen when it's been going on for 2 decades prior? And if it's about social media, then how come NPR didn't mention that at all, or New York Times when they talked about this division? And again, the bigger question is, how come Anna Kasparian and Breaking Points and Mr. Beat have to pretend none of these news stories came out, none of this has been going on, everything's fine, these are not national news stories, we've never heard of these things before? The other one, my favorite, is you can look at the presidential elections map. So there's the map on 2000 on the left, the map on 2020 on the right. See how there's a lot of pink in the left map, and there's not as much pink on the right map, and there's some light blue, but there's not as much light blue. So you go from the left, which is a lot of pink, a lot of light blue, to the right, which is hard red and blue. That's the landslide voting counties where people shifted from being somewhat moderate or slightly conservative or slightly liberal to hardcore conservative and hardcore liberal. These maps are publicly available. This information is 3 years old. This pattern has been documented for 2 decades. Here's another one. 204 election, 220 election. Look at the amount of purple on the 2004 map. Then look at the lack of purple and more hard red and blue. So I would call your attention to the southwest and to the northeast, and specifically the upper Midwest around Minnesota, and then some of the south, and you'll see a lot of purple. And then by 2020, it's almost all gone. No purple. So again, took about 30 seconds to find these things. These are national news stories. Nobody's covering this now. Everybody, including Mr. Beat and Anna Kasparian and Breaking Points and Crystal and Sagar, act like there's no division. What are you talking about, Marjorie? You're making it up. How's Marjorie Taylor Greene making up patterns that go back to the year 2000? She's been able to single-handedly cause division in America for the last 23 years by herself. Then there was this survey by Time Magazine. Would you even date someone from a different political belief? Hell no. It went from about a third to half of the people in America will not date someone outside of their political party in 2020. That's an increase from 2012 to 2020. Again, social media didn't really get big as it is in division until 2015, 2016. Here's the Pew Research Center, a globally recognized research center. Oops, sorry, let me fix this. Partisan divide, even larger on political issues, 2017. Here's a chart that shows when we look at race, religion, school attendance, education, age, gender, every difference there is between people. All of them stayed static from 1994 to 2017. Again, a 20-year period, basically ending 1 year before social media really got really big. But if we look at party affiliation, it goes from 15 to 36, or doubles, while none of the other considerations increase. So people are being more polarized on party. This has been documented since 1994 by Pew Research Center, one of the most respected survey and research tanks in the earth. And here's Sarah Silverman. Maybe we should break up. That made national news. Everyone forgot. Here's Ron Perlman. Maybe we should separate. February 3rd, 2022. Everybody forgot. Here's Joe Biden did his ultra MAGA speech with a blood red backdrop and United States Marines, and scared the crap out of half the country by saying 74 million Americans are enemies of the state. It was so bad that independent voters say Biden's attack on MAGA Republicans went too far. And he also scared some of his fellow Democrats, causing major division. National news story. Everyone forgets, not covered at all. And then Trump leaves America's most divided since the Civil War. Everyone forgets that. So I just found it incredible, the amount of collective amnesia that happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet. All those facts gone. What? Division in America? No, nothing like that's been going on. It was a gaslight job of levels I haven't really seen in a while. And it was all a lie. So that's what we covered, basic facts that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Yeah, I totally agree, Daniel. So what Daniel says, and this is what I agree with. Okay, unless there's any comments from anybody, we'll leave it there. It's a relatively quick show. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I'll be fine, but I got a haircut, so I got a little cold. I got the haircut, so take a look at that, and we will meet you again next week, and we'll be doing shows very soon. We're also going to be trying to expand our reach of our show and be broadcasting on new channels. So look forward to that. And we'll see you soon. Thank you. Good night.